abundant life that you give us. God, thank you for the passion that you have for your people. God, thank you for the depths to which you've loved us. And Father, the intimacy that I can have with you. Because you're real and you're true. You're holy and you are perfect. Father, I declare that I fear you for that. But God, more than that, I am humbled to be loved by you. And so, Father, I pray that as tonight, as we dive into just how personal you are with us as your people, God, that we would have a deeper reverence for you, God, that we would just seek your face greater. Father, we would fall deeply in love with you more. So, God, we love you. We praise you. In Jesus' name. Amen. So, James, what do you got just off the bat?
I was telling JP like right before we started, the shifting point in my walk was when I understood that God was personal and that he wanted to be, that he was a person. And like you said, personal is something that is one of the attributes that make God who he is. Yeah. It's what separates him and makes him different than these other gods that maybe other cultures or other religions might serve. And just for me, before growing up, I would know about God, obviously, but maybe the people that taught me didn't see him as being personal, so they simply taught me what they knew, and that would be about who God is and that he is loving, but not seeing the depth to that.
Yeah.
And then just that he does these things, and so I would do my best to live for, or to try to find ways to worship this God that did these things.
Yeah.
But it's hard to be motivated to serve an idea, right? Or
right.
to fall in love with an idea or some entity that I do not know or can't know.
Yeah.
And so, then being challenged by people who understood that God was a person and seeing that their lives were changed, that's motivation right there. Who is this person that changed them? And so I started my search of going through the Gospels of who is Jesus, and if he is a person, then what do I admire about that person, right? And then just seeing how he worked, how Jesus lived, and then tying that into seeing Jesus in the Old Testament through God, and it's it's obvious that he is a person, because the things that he did and the way that he was moving in the Old Testament is very similar to the way that he started moving in my life, and so just understanding that he was a person, I think. For facts, to change the way that I live in that, and an idea can impact you, but a person will rub off on you, and you'll start taking on the weight. Characters. It's the fruit of the spirit. We start acting like him when he's with us.
I think that it's when we don't distinguish between our faith as being I'm going to try to stay away from a personal relationship because I like a better term for that. But whenever we distinguish between our relationship with Jesus as personal instead of an idea, it becomes less legalistic and more sought after. And for me, it's once I realized that my relationship with Jesus is real and it's personal, it can be very intimate, I no longer started checking off boxes now I have to read my Bible, I can check that off the box, but I can go to Jesus and seek his face. It's no longer legalistic, but it's me seeking after while I've already been sought after my Savior. And for me, just like you, my walk with Jesus drastically shifted when I realized it's so much more than what I think it is. Jesus is, like James has been saying, a person. God is a person, but he's also knowable.
Yeah.
And when we think about that, like it changes our entire mindset on this whole idea of placing faith in Jesus, because, like I said, it's no longer legalism, but a true, genuine relationship.
Yeah.
And so I'm drawn to, as a sinner, we're drawn to wander away from our God and our Creator. And so from the very beginning, from the time that we're conceived, we don't know God. And so this morning I was in my quiet time, and I was really morning, afternoon. I was reading my Bible, and I'm finishing the book of Deuteronomy, and Moses is telling the Israelites, or God is telling Moses the Israelites are going to be an abomination. They're not going to follow the commandments that Moses is giving them. And as he's telling them this, God gives Moses this song to give to the Israelites to sing, and he declares that they are going to follow after other gods, and as they're going to follow after other gods and other idols and ideas, that they're falling away from following God Himself. And I thought to myself, how often in my life, just like the Israelites did, how do I follow after and seek after other gods or other things or other idols in my life that I cannot and will not ever be able to know? And as I am never going to be able to know them, the flip side is true, that I have a God and a Creator who I can know intimately and personally, who can drastically change every aspect of my life, that I can communicate with and commune with and do life with, and be guided by and lean on wisdom for the God that I can know personally. But often in my life, I turn away from Him and seek after other idols and other gods, because I think that I can find greater satisfaction in them, but in reality, like they don't and cannot ever suffice. And I just thought that it was so incredibly humbling that I can know my God. And when I read what Moses was telling to the Israelites right before he's about to die, is that he's written the law. That God has given this law that they can know God and fear God and follow God. But then often, like we go back and we read stories like Exodus and see like they traded the God that they can know for a golden calf. Or in Romans, when Paul says they exchanged the immortal God for other things in their life, that they worshipped created things rather than the Creator of it. And often in our lives, we fall prey to that because we are sinners. We were dead in sin, and God has made us alive together with Jesus. And from that, we can now know God personally because of who Jesus is.
Yeah. And I think like Him being personal, Him wanting to be beside us in our life. Well, first of all, it's hinted at. It's spoken. It's written throughout Scripture. It talks about how God wants to walk beside you. Isaiah mentions how He wants to hold you by the hand and things like that. Just like simple things that seem like just like mushy or like rainbows or whatever. But it's like no, like if God is a person, why would He not long for the things that we long for with other people? Right, so He just wants to be with us, and so that personal aspect of Him wanting to be with us I think it stirs us on in the same way that him loving us stirs us to love him back. We want to be with him because of his pursuit of us, and we love him because he loved us. Because I mean, if you look at your life, like that's motivating. It makes us want to know who he is.
Yeah.
Because everyone that loves you, in your life, right? Now there may be people that you don't know yet who can love you.
Right. Yeah.
Like I come across someone, like that person loves you, but they have to get to know you. So if someone loves you, you know them. Except most people like to forsake this one person who loves them more than anybody else, and that's God. And so that would, I don't know. I feel like that's good. That should give us a push to figure out like who is this person, who's in love with who I am,
right?
And who wants to be with me and wants to have that relationship with me. Already started that relationship. So,
right. Yeah.
I think it's just a good thinker. Let's realize, you're in a relationship with everyone that loves you.
Yeah.
So don't push aside this one. Like what makes it different?
Yeah. And I think that once we come to terms with and grasp that, like that relationship just starts to take off. We recognize, those who I'm in a relationship with, I love and they love me back. Those relationships are typically those that are strongest or most vulnerable.
Yeah.
Maybe even best communicated. There's so many different aspects of a relationship whenever you recognize how personal it is and how intimate it is. And then from that, like that relationship then begins to take off whenever we realize like our relationship with God is just that personal, just that intimate. And from that, we recognize that, as I'm able to know God and as I'm able to understand the depth of his love for me, especially as it's poured out in the person of Jesus and his work on the cross, which is obviously most evident as we talked about God is loving, or God is love, that he sent Jesus, his only begotten son, to die on the cross. We recognize the love that God had for us and the ability that we have through Jesus to know him as he's our mediator and our high priest. That through that, like recognizing that this relationship, once it becomes something that I understand and love to deepen and seek after more, that it then becomes very close to who we are, and indeed it actually becomes the very essence of who we are. And I think that as we recognize, yes, God is personal, he then shows us that as he's personal, and he's also in that relationship moving and working, and he's not just a wall that stands there and we are in a relationship with it, but he's moving and he's working and like he's nudging and he's convicting and he's leading and he's guiding, he's communicating and he's showing and revealing.
Yeah.
And so I often think that sometimes we negate the fact that God actually communicates and he actually shows and he actually does things that a humanly relationship is capable of doing. Not in the fact that God is a physical human in front of us communicating and showing and leading and guiding. But oftentimes we get into this very idea that whenever we're praying or whatever, we're praying to a ceiling or the sky, and that it's not actually intimate or personal.
Yeah.
And so I think that as we approach God and how personal He is and intimate the relationship is, we have to be careful of understanding just how personal it is. You know, like I think that it can be dangerous if we don't.
Yeah, I think it definitely can be dangerous as to the effects that it can have on us.
Yeah.
But I think also we can miss out on a lot.
Yeah.
It can rob us from things like those that you are close to and who you dearly love. Like you can definitely attest that, like, oh, like we love being around each other. We have a good time. We do these things and we have good memories together and stuff like that. So it's the same with God. And so there's the small benefits that we can get from being with God and walking with Him. But I think also He has great plans for all of us, and how God accomplishes His plans proves that He is relational.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is the case throughout history. It's how God enjoys to work. It's like it's how He likes to get things done. We can with Abraham, He established His people, right? Like he started His people with Abraham. That's something that He wanted. He wanted a people. He decided to use Abraham for that. And then He used Jacob to establish a nation. You know, you using His sons to start the tribes. He wanted to increase His people, and He did that through Jacob. And then even through Moses, He saved them. He wanted to save His people from slavery. He used Moses for that. He wanted to save them again from like elimination through Esther.
Right.
Is that right? Yeah. Just more persecution. They're doing stuff, and so he did what He wanted to do through Esther, and then he told that He was coming. Like He revealed, like, I want people to know that I'm coming and that I want to be with them as a man. And He told Malachi, He told Isaiah, and so he wants us to be aware of that. So He did that. Then He saved us on the cross with Jesus, right, through a person. And then He spread the news about who He is to be with us through Paul and Peter and just different missionaries. And so it's clear that if God wants to get something done, He wants to use those who are in relationship with Him, and that is like the way that He works doesn't change, and the way that He likes to work, I believe, does not change, because He doesn't change. And if that's the case, and if you are in a relationship with Him, then it'd be really cool to sit down and let's be introspective on, okay, like, what does He want to do? What does He want to accomplish through me? And let's not diminish who He is through us. Of like, oh, like He wants, like, oh, he wants me to tell that coworker about who He is, and he wants to know that. He wants to know that person, and that's a way that you can serve Him, and that you can worship Him in that way. But he like, I think He has some things that are just much greater for us. And do we know what they are? Probably not. I think we can know them, but I mean, if we look and we look at what God did through people who are no more different than us.
Right.
We can be encouraged. God wants to do great things. He just needs needs people who are willing and obedient, right?
Right.
Like, it's like God didn't do anything for me. Yeah, because maybe He did it because you didn't take a step that He told you to take. Right. You might be going a different direction. So I think we should stop and try to rid ourselves from distractions and to listen, to do our best to hear what He has to say after learning what His voice sounds like. And then He's able to do great things through us. He wants to use you. He it's what He enjoys to do. He takes delight in us because He knows us, right? How can He take delight in someone that He does not know?
Right.
He takes delight in you. That's what He says. And so be encouraged that He knows you and He wants to use you. It's the evidence that He has provided. It's the things that He wanted us to be aware of. Because I think it's things that He wants to do now. So just be encouraged to keep pursuing Him. Let's figure out more about this person.
Yeah, there's often like this massive misconception that it's like, well, God used guys like Abraham or Moses, and somehow we think that they are more capable or more adequate of revival than someone God can use today.
Yeah.
And That's probably one of the biggest misconceptions. Is yes, like the name's written in the book of the Bible that God has written to us. Yes, God used these people to bring about His covenants and establish His relationship with His people. But that does not, like, we cannot sit here and say like God's work is diminished because of who I am. Like God works and He's going to work no matter who it's through and who He chooses to use. He's going to accomplish that which He has set forth to do. And from that, like we can't think that God's work can be diminished based on how inadequate we feel.
Yeah, like you're not gonna, like, if you're unwilling to be obedient, like it's not that God's like, oh, I can't do it. It's something that He wants you to be a part of, right?
Yeah.
Personal, relational. He wants to be with us. He's independent. He wants us to be included on how He lives.
Yeah.
And so yeah. Like you're not gonna stop anything. He just wants you to be a part of something.
Yeah. And oftentimes the reality is, yes, we are inadequate in many ways. God can still use us, and He still does use His people.
Yeah.
The other misconception that I hear is, well, God, like what we were talking about earlier, God doesn't audibly speak.
Yeah.
And yes, while you may not hear God audibly say to you, "Hey, I'm calling you to Turkey or Afghanistan to preach the gospel," it may not be that yes, God's not going to say that out loud, but it also may not be the very fact that you just are not listening.
Yeah.
And from that, like you cannot hear a voice that your ears are tuned to hear. That you are not diligently seeking to understand and listen to. And even as Elijah heard God in a still small whisper, that to him was as massively loud that God could have screamed, as if anybody could have heard that. And as he heard that, he realized, okay, like God is speaking and He's calling me, and now even though I was in the midst of a whisper, and I would argue we have something far greater than a whisper. We have God's word that He's written personally to His people, that we can know Him and understand Him. Therefore, if our ears aren't tuned to hear, and our desire isn't to open up His word and grow in relationship with Him, you're not going to hear God's voice because you're not seeking it out.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, through the Bible, God is personal and He reveals Himself, and through that we can know Him because of His beloved Son that He sent to die on the cross. But more than that, we can know the depth and the riches of His love and His grace and His mercy that's poured out on every page and every word of the Bible that He's written to His people.
Yeah. Just like he was saying, like that God can be seen in the Word. Like He knows us, but we don't start out automatically knowing who He is, like it is from His side.
Right.
So He has to show Himself, and I mean, God permitted Himself to be sought by people who did not ask for Him, right? Like people who I don't know, that aren't loving towards Him in return, and He does these things, and He puts Himself on display in an extremely vulnerable way. Who someone that is like Him, and the God that He is to do that is, it doesn't seem like why would you do that? Like you shouldn't have to do that, and I feel like you probably shouldn't, but He does that anyway, because He wants to be seen by us, and
right.
I think He wants us to know who He is, and the fact that He continually puts Himself out there to people who are constantly provoking Him to His face, and He's shouting, here I am, here I am.
Yeah.
Like literally, like the Bible says that I'm right here, but we still turn away from it. like that's a vulnerable thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we get, we ask someone to hang out and they say, oh, we can, and then we feel hurt and don't, and then we never ask anyone else ever to go anywhere ever again, right? But it's like that's something that's small, but I mean, look at what God is doing, and the rejection that He is facing, and the hurt and the pain that He faces by the people that He is deeply in love with. That's hurt.
Yeah.
That's vulnerability that seems to be backlashing on Him. I don't know if that's like. I don't know if that's like bad to say. Maybe I shouldn't. But it just, he longs to be known.
Yeah.
Just like how all of us do.
Yeah.
So he's putting himself out there to be known by you. He wants to be with you. So.
And I think that like whenever he says things in the Bible, like I'm jealous, like I've been jealous for you.
Oh yeah.
Like just like you said, like God desires to be known by His people. While He knows His people, like our hearts are still hardened to Him at points in our life, and for some people, their hearts are completely hardened to Him that they reject Him, and still God says, like I'm jealous I'm jealous to be known by you.
Yeah.
Because I don't want you sacrificing yourself to idols and golden calves and things in the Old Testament, like people would sacrifice their children to a foreign god, and God longed to be known by these people and not see them destroy themselves to know an unknowable God, but to come to terms with understanding that we can know God. And like when God says to Elijah in 1 Kings 19, he says, I've been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the people of Israel. This is Elijah talking, who have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword, and I, even only I am left, and they go, and they seek my life to take it away. And then we see, like, not only is God jealous to be known by His people, but His people should be jealous for the people to know Him. Like we should be wanting other people to be. We should be so jealous for God that all we do is want people to come to know Him. Because we know how personal He is, we know how relational He is, and intimate He is with us. That we therefore want and desire people to come to know Him.
Yeah. It's like God accomplishing His jealousy through us in the sense of like bringing people to Him. Okay?
Yeah.
Kind of what you're saying. But I think His jealousy exists because He wants to be with us. Exodus 34, when God tells us, God says, "Hey, I don't worship other idols," and we hear that, and it's like, you know what I mean? It's like we accept. It's like I think I see why it's wrong because I'm supposed to be serving someone else, but it's perfectly okay to take something that we're told not to do and see if we can figure out like why it's wrong and like where it comes from. I do that. I would encourage people to do that. And so I think the reason why God tells us that don't serve other idols isn't because don't do that for whatever reason, but it's the fact that He's jealous. Exodus 34. For you shall not worship any other god, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. Yeah. So it's like don't go to these other people don't go to these other things because I want you, right? Even the small things that we can, worship or give ourselves to, God wants to be involved in.
Yeah.
Small things, small things like eating, and even just playing and having a good time and stuff like that. Like God wants to be a part of those things. And as I was telling him, I think it's Exodus 32, when the Israelites did, Exodus 32, when the Israelites did build the golden calf, and God was infuriated by it, like He was mad, like why did they do that? But it's like why, once again it's like, oh, He was just mad because they're supposed to be serving Him. But then you look at what the Israelites did, and it's what they did that is what frustrated Him, and they were crediting the the calf with, oh, you delivered us from the Egyptians, when it was actually God who did it. And they were even offering sacrifices, or in turn just ministering to this golden calf and blessing this golden calf, like lifting up songs to it. They were eating around it, and they even rose up to play around it. And what made God mad is that he wanted these things to be directed at him, right? Don't serve other idols because I'm a jealous God. So the things that he does, that we do, we have to be aware of why we're doing it. And I think it's cool that proves that God is not personal.
Yeah.
Again, but yeah, it's just crazy. Like the things that God instructs us to do either protects us or blesses us as it invites us into a relationship with Him. So
yeah, and I think a cool thing that I see in that is, as the Israelites build the golden calf and they worship the golden calf, their sin in their life kept them from knowing God greater. Yet He still revealed Himself to them.
Yeah.
Yet he did not end it there, because He promised their forefathers that they would inherit a land flowing with milk and honey, which proves God's faithfulness, but that which He was going to accomplish from the very beginning, that He would be dwelling with His people, that He would know His people for eternity, was still in the forefront of who He was, of all that He was doing, even in the midst of sin and rebellion. While our sin can hinder our ability to know God greater and deeper, God's still going to accomplish His promises, and He's going to be faithful to see to it that those come about, because that's who He is. And I think that as we see God working in the Israelites, as He gives them this land that flows with milk and honey, and just the blessing that is, knowing that they would still rebel. And that's at the end of Deuteronomy. Knowing that they weren't going to keep God's covenant, that they were not going to perfectly be obedient to the law. He still gave them the land, and He still was working and moving in their midst. As a cloud by day and a fire by night, like they still could see and know God, be led by God, even in the midst of their rebellion. But there was something there that was hindered because they could not fully know God yet, which was really interesting to me. Is that they could not, they did not grasp or fully know God. Because of sin and rebellion, and obviously that's passed on to us. But also, like God was looking forward to the propitiation that He would send forth in the person of Jesus. To be a sacrifice, to ransom sinners from captivity and slavery, just like He had with the Israelites, and reconcile them back to Himself, that they can know Him. So. Yeah, as I was thinking about that, I thought about the idea that sin hinders our ability to know God fully and in a greater and deeper way, because we're not being obedient to His commandments, His statutes, His laws. Because in doing so, in obeying Him, we come to know Him greater.
Yeah. We can know like what He wants, and we can know ways to bless Him. We can know things about ourselves that we can give to Him that He enjoys, right? Like if we are His children, though our gifts may be small and maybe, I don't know, maybe silly, He still delights in them. And so when we're obeying Him, like, okay, like He likes this, and He doesn't like that. So because I'm in a relationship with someone, I don't want to make Him that. So I'm not going to do that. So and if He does like this, then I just want to do that. Not necessarily because I feel like I have to, or it's some idea I'm following, but it's a person. So I'm just going to do this for Him because I've come to love Him. So
and as we look at it from this side of the cross and redemption, knowing that Jesus has come and he took on flesh. Like that is the most personal thing that God could have done. Is while yes, he is knowable in his ways, and he could have just written us the Bible and not have sent Jesus, and I still think we could enter into a redemptive relationship with him.
Yeah.
The Old Testament's very clear that without, and the writer of Hebrews, that without without blood, like there can be no forgiveness of sin. And that was the point of the high priest sacrificing bulls and goats in the Old Testament in the tabernacle. And in the writer of Hebrews, it is clear that without the shedding of blood, that there can be no forgiveness of sins. And that's whenever we see Jesus steps out of heaven and onto earth, and he obediently lives the life that God has intended his people to live. He keeps the law perfectly, but also he is punished and sent to die on the cross, and he sheds his blood for the forgiveness of the sin of his people. And God is so personal that he steps out of heaven to do this himself. And the writer of Hebrews in Hebrews 4 says, "Since then we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold fast to our confession. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need." That Jesus is the one who's passed through heaven, and he's took on flesh, and has become so personal in his relationship with creation and humanity that he took on flesh, that he became like humans. And in doing so, he shed his blood, and we hold fast to the confession of our faith in Jesus, that as we confess with our mouth that Jesus is Lord, believe in our heart that God has raised him from the dead after he gave his life on the cross, that we will be saved. And that through that, we can draw near to the throne of grace and be saved and know our God. Because Jesus, God the Son, has personally and intimately drawn near to us.
Yeah, like, I mean, how more near can you get? Like, right,
yeah.
coming. So,
yeah.
But I think our relationship with him is made possible because Jesus came, at least in the way that we now know it. But he also came to relate, I think.
Yeah.
Just like he was saying, like, we don't have a high priest who can sympathize with our weaknesses. In the ways that we struggle, he saw that face to face, and he had to deal with that. And so I think that's interesting. I think that strengthens the relationship when you understand the other person's part, and so that's cool. But also just simple things like, I mean, he came and he probably laughed with his disciples. And I'm pretty sure he probably wrestled at one point. Just what guys do, or whatever, what people do. He engaged with people, and he interacted with us from heaven.
Yeah.
But being amongst us and at our level, he was able to interact with us in a new way, and I think he wanted to, and that kind of shows that that loving aspect of him just wanting to know us and to be around us, to experience us in a new way.
Yeah.
So, and obviously, because he did something, there's going to be blessings a part of that we get to experience. So we get to experience him in a new way because he experienced us in a new way.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So, just God preserves the simple. Pretty cool verse I found. And I think that him coming is one example of that. If we understand, like, he was a man.
Yeah.
Like, he was in the physical realm.
Right, yeah. In time.
So, but yeah, there's much more to it that shows that God wants to be with you.
Yeah. And because of Jesus, we can enter into and be reconciled back to God in this relationship, this personal relationship. And I told you earlier, I'm staying, I want to, while our relationship with Jesus is a personal relationship, and you can ask people, hey, do you have a personal relationship with Jesus? I think that the Bible it uses other language and different verbiage other than that. And for the past year, we've been studying the book of Ephesians, and God, through Paul, is telling the church in Ephesus and in that region, and now us as his followers, that we are united with Christ, that we're in union with Christ, that we're together with Christ, and we've been raised with Christ. And because of this, it's all because of Jesus. And so, yes, we have a personal relationship with Jesus, but that doesn't even get to the point of how intimate the relationship is, because asking, do you have a personal relationship, is almost asking, are y'all two separate things? And with Jesus, we're one with him. And with that, the Bible uses analogies. God uses analogies through the inspired authors to point us to the intimacy of the relationship. And Paul uses things like parents and children, and more specifically husbands and wives, how they become one together. It's probably the most intimate way we can try to grasp the relationship that we have with Jesus. Is that yes, while we are physically here and Jesus is not physically in the flesh with us, we are still united and one with him, just as I am one with my wife.
Yeah, he's the head of the church, so the church is the body, and I think you have a body, and I think you know that the head is a part of your body. So I mean, that symbolism, God is he is one with us, and also Jesus left his home to pursue his bride, the church. Jesus is the bridegroom, and so the man is supposed to leave his family to pursue his bride. You know what they do, so become one. So it's kind of it's symbolism. Everything exists to show who he is.
Yeah.
So this is what Jesus does. So in turn, we do a we do kind of like a part of that, I guess, to help us understand who he is more.
Yeah, you may be surprised as you think about it, like just how much of this life is an analogy or a symbolic way of seeing either our relationship with Jesus or more importantly, who God is, and kind of how he in his sovereignty governs the universe and how he is and who he is. But also, like there's things in our life that will point us to how God is personal and intimate if we would just open our eyes.
Yeah.
Jesus uses language, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. If you would just listen and just seek his face, we would come to recognize and see him and long for him and love him deeper and greater. And it's from that we should approach knowing Jesus more and wanting to pursue him daily for all of our days. And so, before we close, do you got anything else?
I can't think of anything.
Right, yeah. I kind of want to go back to the very beginning whenever we were talking about we opened with this attribute is sort of how we can know that God is true, the one true God. There is a kind of like an analogy that people who think that universal salvation is true can say, hey, this is why everybody who dies enters into heaven. The analogy is that, say you have an elephant and it's surrounded by so many people, and they're all blindfolded, and while they can communicate with each other, they're feeling the elephant, and one may feel its stomach and say, hey, this is a table. One may feel its what's this thing called?
Trunk.
Its trunk, and say this is a rope. And one may feel its tail and say these are flowers. And there's a few things that are wrong with this analogy, and the analogy seeks to prove that no matter who you are, and no matter what you feel, you're all feeling the same thing, and therefore you're going to end up in the same place. The two things that are wrong with this analogy are, one, the person telling the story is essentially telling the story from an omniscient point of view, meaning an all-knowing point of view. Because you know that it's clearly an elephant, and you know that clearly these people who are feeling this elephant are feeling different parts of an elephant. And so that therefore dismisses the argument right there. But another greater way of combating this argument is, what if the elephant could speak? What if the elephant could simply say, I'm an elephant? And what if it does? And the reality is, the gods who claim to be gods, while they have many followers and maybe some of the most devout men and women, fail to see that their God isn't the one true God, because their God is in the grave, for one. But also that our God has spoken to us both generally and especially in revelation of creation and in the person of Jesus and the inspired scriptures that we hold and should cling to with our life today. Our God has spoken to us.
Yeah.
And therefore, the elephant in the analogy can be known. Because the elephant, the analogy in life speaks, because he is the God of all creation, of all the universe. He is the God who has created every human being in his image. He's the God who can be known and personally and intimately communed with and loved by and experience and express love for. And therefore, the God that we know, the God that we serve, the God that we love, the God that we cherish is personal. And that's one of the things that, as we grasp it, changes the trajectory of our life. It changes what we seek after. It changes what we think of when we wake up, and what we think of throughout our day, and what we think of when we go to sleep. Like whenever we realize how personal God is, it changes everything about us.
Yeah. We just want him to be a part of everything.
Yeah.
That's why being aware that he's a person changes your life, because you want him to be in it.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Yeah. And so we desperately hope that this has created in you a deeper love for Jesus. But don't just take our word for it. Please, I don't just believe the things that we say because we're saying them in front of a camera and you're listening to it.
Yeah, like what we mean by that is like, don't be like, oh, God is loving, if you haven't personally experienced that. Like, just because it's being proclaimed to you does not mean that you actually believe that it's true.
Yeah.
So it's perfectly okay to challenge things. We encourage you to challenge it. If you look for answers in what is true, then you will not be disappointed.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
or you will be disappointed, but it'll be something that you need to know. So,
Right.
But pursue things for yourself. It changes when you actually come to believe it instead of just hearing it.
Yeah.
So,
That's good. Well, guys, like we said, this is our last Resurgence Live. We won't be doing online anymore. June 7th, we will meet face to face. And we're so excited. We cannot wait. Until then, communicate with us, reach out to us on Instagram, text us, call us if you need anything. Much love to y'all. James, would you mind praying us out, brother?
Yeah. God, we thank you for showing us things. Thank you for being with us as we communicate them. I pray that you continue to be with our hearts and be with our minds, be with our eyes, so that we can hear you and live for you in a way that increases the understanding of those who we teach. And so just be with us in our lives and keep us strong. And I pray that you be with the students. I pray that you would stir a passion and a longing within their hearts to come to know you. You want to be known by them, and you want to live with them and be with them. And so I pray that you would just initiate that process within their hearts and within their lives. And so we thank you for your love. We thank you for your pursuit of us. And I pray that we would continue to seek you and continue to remember you and all the things that you've done. So we love you, God, and ask these things in your name.